Queen Victoria defined one of the most fascinating and contradictory eras in history. She reigned for more than 6 decades, witnessed unprecedented social revolutions and technological advances, and at the same time endured personal tragedies that left an indelible mark on her life. Behind her solemn image lay secrets, strange customs, intense passions, and decisions that altered the course of Europe. In this video, you will discover 25 striking and, in many cases, little-known facts about Queen Victoria, a woman small in stature, yet immense in power and influence. Before we continue, we invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell, so you never miss our historical content. Without further ado, let us begin. Number 1. A childhood shaped by the Kensington system. Victoria grew up under the strict supervision of her mother, the Duchess of Kent, and Sir John Conroy, the family's advisor. This regime, known as the Kensington system, isolated her from other children and forbade her from having friends of her own age. She was never allowed to be apart from her mother or a tutor, not even within the palace. The aim was to keep her under control and dependent upon her mother, in anticipation of her eventual inheritance of the throne. This solitary childhood forged a strong character, but also sowed in her a deep resentment towards Conroy and a distant relationship with her mother. When she acceded to the throne in 1837, one of her first decisions was to free herself from that oppressive guardianship. Number 2. An unexpected successor. Victoria was not born destined to be queen. As the daughter of Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, the 4th son of King George III, she occupied a distant place in the line of succession. However, the absence of legitimate heirs among her uncles changed her fate. George IV died in 1830 without legitimate children. His brother, William IV, also left no surviving offspring. When her father died in 1820, Victoria was still a child and remained under her mother's guardianship, with no one imagining that she would one day wear the crown. Finally, in 1837, upon the death of William IV, the young woman of barely 18 years was proclaimed sovereign of the United Kingdom. From a secondary princess, she became the most powerful woman of her time and, through her descendants, shaped the course of much of European royalty. Number 3. She married for love, something rare in royalty. At a time when marriages between royal houses were almost always political alliances, Victoria chose to marry for a genuine bond of affection. In 1840, she wed her cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, whom she described in her diaries as handsome, intelligent, and kind. Their union was regarded as an example of marriage for love, and together they built a large and close-knit family. Albert exerted great influence in her life, supporting her in political and social matters, as well as promoting causes such as education, science, and the arts. Their relationship marked a shift in the image of monarchy, from a distant institution to a model of family life. Number 4. She popularized the fashion for the white wedding dress. When Victoria married Prince Albert in 1840, she surprised many by choosing a wedding dress entirely in white, accompanied by a veil, orange blossoms, and Honiton lace. At that time, it was customary for royal brides to marry in colored gowns, often silver or gold. Her choice was seen as innovative and quickly set a trend. Soon other aristocratic brides imitated the style, and over time it became the standard in much of the Western world. Thus, Victoria's personal decision established one of the most enduring wedding traditions of modern times. Number 5. She hated pregnancy, yet had many children. Although Victoria and Albert shared a very close, loving relationship and went on to form a large family with 9 children, the Queen never hid her dislike of pregnancy. In her diaries, she repeatedly wrote that she found it unpleasant, painful, and restrictive. She complained of nausea, physical discomfort, and, above all, the loss of freedom it imposed upon her. She even described pregnancy as the most detestable occupation of life. Nevertheless, she fulfilled the dynastic duty of ensuring heirs. Number 6. She had 9 children and 42 grandchildren. The marriage of Victoria and Albert was highly prolific. They had 9 children, who in turn gave her 42 grandchildren. Many of them married into other European royal families, extending her influence across the continent. Among her descendants were kings, queens, emperors, and empresses of countries such as Germany, Russia, Greece, Spain, Norway, and Sweden. This web of dynastic alliances earned Victoria the nickname the Grandmother of Europe, for by the turn of the century, much of Europe's reigning houses were related to her. However, these connections did not prevent her grandchildren and great-grandchildren from facing each other years later in the First World War, a conflict that divided the very family she had united. Number 7. She was the first monarch to use anesthesia in childbirth. In 1853, during the birth of her 8th child, Prince Leopold, Queen Victoria agreed to use chloroform to relieve the pain of labor. The substance was then new and controversial, as some doctors and clergymen considered it dangerous or contrary to the divine will. Victoria's decision, as a public figure of immense influence, helped legitimize the use of anesthesia in modern medicine. Once her positive experience became known, chloroform began to be more widely accepted in hospitals and clinics. Number 8. She almost died at the age of 21 in an assassination attempt. Although Victoria's life was surrounded by privilege, it was not free from danger. Barely 3 years after her coronation, and only a few months after marrying Prince Albert, she suffered an attack that could have altered the course of British history. On the 10th of June 1840, while riding in a carriage with her husband in London, an 18-year-old named Edward Oxford fired at the royal couple. Neither was injured, but the social impact was enormous. Oxford was arrested, brought to trial, and declared not guilty by reason of insanity, which led to his confinement in Bethlehem Hospital. This was merely the first of 7 assassination attempts against the Queen, showing that even at the height of her popularity, she was exposed to discontent and violence. The composure with which she faced that attack strengthened her image as a firm and courageous sovereign. Number 9. An attempt was made to strike her with a cane. Victoria's popularity did not shield her from attacks. On 27th June 1850, as she was about to enter her carriage in London, she was struck on the head with a cane by an Irish ex-soldier named Robert Pate. Although the attack caused a bruise on her forehead, she suffered no serious injury. Pate was immediately arrested, tried, and sentenced to 7 years deportation to Australia. The incident once again highlighted how vulnerable the Queen could be in public, as it was not the first time someone had tried to harm her. Number 10. She was the first British monarch to reside officially at Buckingham Palace. When Victoria came to the throne in 1837, Buckingham Palace had not yet been fully established as the official royal residence. It had been built as a townhouse in 1703 and transformed into a palace by George IV, but until then, no monarch had adopted it as their main home. Victoria was the first to do so, moving in from the start of her reign. Over time, the palace became the epicenter of the British monarchy. It hosted visiting dignitaries, banquets, and state ceremonies. Thanks to her decision, Buckingham definitively replaced St. James's Palace as the principal royal residence, establishing itself as the symbolic and political heart of monarchical power in London. Number 11. She witnessed the expansion of the British Empire. During Victoria's reign, the British Empire reached its greatest territorial extent and became the most influential power in the world. Its dominion stretched across Africa, Asia, and Oceania, giving rise to the expression, "The sun never sets on the British Empire." The most symbolic episode of this expansion came in 1877, when Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli conferred upon her the title Empress of India. In doing so, the British monarchy reinforced its role as the axis of a global empire, which, by the late 19th century, ruled over more than 400 million subjects. Number 12. Queen Victoria and the Age of Great Inventions. Victoria's reign coincided with the consolidation of the Industrial Revolution, which had begun in the 18th century but reached its peak in the 19th. During these decades, the United Kingdom was transformed into the world's most advanced industrial power. The railway revolutionized transport, the telegraph shortened communication distances, and mass production changed life in the cities. The Queen also witnessed medical advances such as surgical anesthesia, which she herself used during the birth of her 8th child in 1853, and innovations that marked daily life, such as electricity and Alexander Graham Bell's telephone. More than any sovereign before her, Victoria became associated with modernity, and her reign stood as a symbol of one of the most transformative, technological, and social shifts in history. Number 13. She falsely accused a lady-in-waiting of being pregnant. In 1859, Queen Victoria was at the center of a scandal within her own court. Convinced, without solid evidence, that one of her ladies-in-waiting, Lady Flora Hastings, was pregnant out of wedlock, she ordered a medical examination to confirm her suspicions. The court and the press echoed the rumor, gravely damaging Lady Flora's reputation. Soon afterwards, the truth emerged. She was not pregnant, but gravely ill with liver cancer, a disease that would lead to her death in July of that same year. The Queen's error unleashed a wave of public criticism against her and temporarily tarnished her image, exposing Victoria's more impulsive and severe side. Number 14. Carrier of hemophilia. Queen Victoria is known for having transmitted hemophilia to her descendants, a genetic disorder that prevents blood from clotting properly. None of her ancestors had suffered from it, leading historians to believe it originated as a spontaneous mutation in her. 3 of her 9 children were carriers or sufferers, and through her daughters, the disease spread to several European royal houses, including the Spanish, Russian, and German dynasties. For this reason, hemophilia became known as the royal disease. Its impact was especially tragic in the case of her grandson, Tsarevich Alexei Romanov of Russia, whose fragile health became a matter of state. Number 15. Perpetual mourning for Albert. The death of Prince Albert in December 1861, at the age of 42, was the hardest blow in Victoria's life. Deeply affected, the Queen chose to wear black from that moment on, and never again wore another color in public during the 40 remaining years of her life. She withdrew from political life for long periods and avoided public appearances, which drew criticism and accusations of neglecting her duties as sovereign. However, her permanent mourning also reinforced her image as a symbol of marital fidelity and devotion to her husband. Her figure, dressed in mourning, became emblematic of her reign and of an entire era. Number 16. Her obsession with death. From a young age, Queen Victoria developed a marked fascination with death and mourning rituals. This interest intensified after the loss of her husband. She preserved objects belonging to deceased relatives as relics, especially locks of hair, jewelry, or personal garments, to which she attributed profound sentimental value. She also commissioned post-mortem portraits, images taken of the deceased, a common practice in the Victorian era that reflected the desire to keep alive the memory of loved ones. For her, death was not an absolute end, but a constant presence in her daily life. This attachment to the memories and belongings of those she had lost reinforced her image as a woman profoundly shaped by grief and mourning. Number 17. Closeness with her Scottish servant. After Albert's death, Victoria found comfort in the company of John Brown, a Scottish servant who worked at her Balmoral residence. Brown was direct and frank with the Queen, which earned her trust and affection. Their relationship became so close that rumors circulated about a possible romance, though never proven. This closeness earned Victoria the nickname Mrs. Brown, a label used both mockingly and scandalously by critics and opponents. Although the rumors remained mere speculation, the clearest evidence is that Brown became an indispensable confidant in the Queen's life, helping her endure her loneliness and the heavy burden of rule after being widowed. Number 18. First Queen to be photographed and filmed. Victoria was a pioneer in transforming the image of monarchy. She was the first British sovereign to be photographed and filmed. Her photographic portraits began circulating from the 1840s, bringing a queen closer to her subjects through a modern medium for the first time. Later, in 1896, she was captured in brief, moving images by the Lumiere brothers' camera, making her one of the first historical figures to appear in early cinema. These innovations permanently changed the relationship between royalty and the public, creating a direct and lasting visual record of the sovereign that defined an entire era. Number 19. She was extremely short in stature. Despite her imposing historical role, Queen Victoria was very short. She stood at barely 1.52 meters. Her physical figure contrasted with the magnitude of her authority as sovereign of a global empire. However, this apparent fragility was never an obstacle to her strong personality. In official portraits and ceremonies, her solemn bearing and determined character projected an image far more commanding than her actual size suggested. Number 20. Her diaries are still censored. Victoria was a prolific writer. Throughout her life, she penned over 60 million words in personal diaries, recording everything from matters of state to intimate reflections. However, much of that material does not survive in its original form. Her youngest daughter, Princess Beatrice, was entrusted with editing and compiling the diaries after the Queen's death. In doing so, she deleted and rewrote entire passages, destroying much of the original manuscripts. What we know today is filtered through this edition, meaning a significant portion of Victoria's most private thoughts remain hidden or lost forever. Number 21. The longest reigning queen of her time. When the young Victoria was proclaimed queen in 1837, few could have imagined that her reign would last for more than 6 decades, becoming the longest in British history up to that point. In total, she remained on the throne for 63 years and 216 days, until her death in January 1901. No previous British monarch had reigned for so long, and her figure came to symbolize stability in an age of profound change. For the British, she represented a constant. She witnessed governments come and go, social revolutions and scientific discoveries, while her authority endured. Her record was surpassed in September 2015, when her great-great-granddaughter Elizabeth II exceeded it. But Victoria still holds the distinction of being the longest-serving sovereign of the 19th century. Number 22. The last days of Queen Victoria. True to a custom she had maintained throughout her widowhood, Queen Victoria spent her final Christmas at Osborne House, the Isle of Wight residence designed by her husband, Prince Albert. By then, her health was severely deteriorated. She suffered from rheumatism in her legs, which made walking difficult, and her sight was badly impaired by cataracts. In the early days of January 1901, she confessed to feeling weak and unwell. On the 14th of January, she wrote in her diary that she felt sleepy, dizzy, and confused. Her condition worsened progressively until, on 22nd January 1901, at 6:30 in the evening, she died at Osborne House, aged 81. At her deathbed were her eldest son, the Prince of Wales, and future Edward VII, and her eldest grandson, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, along with several children and physicians. With her passing ended one of the longest and most influential reigns in British history, and the Victorian era drew to a close. Number 23. The white funeral and personal objects in her coffin. In 1897, Queen Victoria left detailed instructions for her funeral. It was to be military, in memory of her father, the Duke of Kent, and the predominant color was to be white instead of traditional black mourning. When she died in January 1901, her wishes were carried out. She was dressed in her wedding veil, and her coffin contained deeply personal items: Albert's nightshirt and hand mold, family photographs, and, discreetly, a photograph and lock of hair belonging to John Brown, her loyal servant. The coffin was borne by her son Edward VII, her grandson Kaiser Wilhelm II, and Prince Arthur. The ceremony took place on the 2nd of February 1901 at St. George's Chapel, Windsor, and she was buried beside Albert in the mausoleum at Frogmore. At the moment of burial, snow began to fall, a solemn and symbolic end to a life marked by memory and mourning. Thank you for joining us until the end of the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have something to add, please feel free to share it with us in the comments section. Don't forget to give us a like and share this video with your friends and family, so that more people can discover the story of Queen Victoria and the fascinating era she defined. And if you haven't already, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our historical content. We'll see you in the next video.